What is more dangerous than stress in your team? It's not seeing it until it's too late. Welcome to Thrive at the Top, a podcast for leaders who refuse to trade performance for well-being. My name is Mabel Mimane, and I am the co-founder of Complete Wellbeing Global and the Safe Pillars Framework. Today, we kick off our Deep Dive Safe series, and today we're focusing on S, self-awareness, because without self-awareness, the rest of the framework does not exist. To notice that they are running out of fumes, or to identify or start to see that their own team members are starting to withdraw or are withdrawing, not just underperforming. Self-awareness is a leadership skill that underpins resilience, that underpins communication, decision-making, and overall self-safety of the workplace. And it's not about being soft. It's about you knowing your own internal dashboard and being able to read the signals in others before things start to fall apart or before things start to break down. Let's talk about the cost of ignorance. Here's what happens when you don't have self-awareness as a leader. You overreact to minor issues, and you're not aware of the emotional signals. You can't read the emotional signals in your team. You normalize fatigue, overwork, and low morale. And most dangerous is that you miss out on the early signs of burnout, disengagement, and withdrawal. And if you can take anything away from this conversation, and make sure you take a pen and write it down, you cannot lead what you cannot see or what you refuse to feel. So what does that look like practically if you want to put it into the workplace? I had a conversation with a CEO who reported that between him and his supervisors, that one of his frontline workers was starting to have a sporadic work attendance. So let's say he's supposed to start at 8 o'clock. One time he would come at 8:15, one time he would come at 9 o'clock, one time he would come at 8 as expected, the next time he would come at 10 o'clock, the next time he would ring up and say, I'm running late, the next time he would ring up and say, I'm not coming today, and then the next time he would not ring at all. He would just not turn up to work. No explanation, no phone call, no nothing. And I asked how long this had been going on, and they said it'd been over several months. As a leader, you are supposed to pick this up earlier. It should not go, this behavior should not be allowed to happen over such a long period of time. You are supposed to start, especially if this team member was always good before. His work performance was fine, his attendance was okay. Then just suddenly he started being sporadic. So therefore, as a leader, because you are self-aware and you are aware of you're able to pick up the early signs, you are able to dictate and see that something is wrong here. You don't know what's happening, but you start to notice this sporadic work attendance. Because this manager and his supervisors were not skilled enough, or they did not have the confidence to have this conversation, they allowed this to go longer than necessary. And the problem with that is the later you respond, or the delay that is caused by you waiting, you miss the window for the early signs for you to dictate and support the person earlier. The later you wait to intervene, the less chances of quick recovery or earlier support to intercept the challenges and to support your team. So we always advocate for early intervention, even go better, prevention. But when you start seeing these early signs of absenteeism, sporadic work attendance, then there's something wrong there, especially if your team member has always been okay before. What's happening there? And then you need to have the skills and the tools to start these conversations. And it's not about judgment, it's about you starting the conversation with your team member because you've noticed the change of behavior. So what do self-aware leaders actually do? Firstly, we're going to talk about yourself. You can start implementing self-check-ins with yourself every week, possibly maybe at the end of your week. So if you're working Monday to Friday, maybe do a check-in on Friday and say, how was I this week? How was I coping? Was I leading with clarity or was I reactive? How am I feeling at the end of this week? Ask yourself what's weighing on me right now. And that's simply an assessment of what's going on this week. Where am I feeling heavy? Where am I feeling tired, frustrated, right? So that's just a weekly check-in on yourself as a leader. Second tip, do a pre-meeting pause. That's just asking yourself, how am I showing up today? Again, you want to lead with clarity and not reactive. The third one is team check-in, right? So you've done it for yourself. Now I'm just giving you some tools into how to check in with your team. Normalize short conversation loops with your team to just check in. How are you feeling? How are you coping? How's your week? How's your day? How's your morning? How's your afternoon? Normalize this, because sometimes it's going to feel very strange if it's something that you've never done before. But of course, there's a starting point. But normalize those short conversations. Tip number 4, within the safe language for your team, say, I'm sensing fatigue. Normalize naming these emotions. How are we going? As opposed to saying, let's dig in, let's push through, let's keep fighting. Yes, these have their places, but sometimes it's not about pushing. It's about checking and saying, how are you holding up? And hear what your team, how your team responds to these chosen words or the language that you're using. But you have to create safe language around the emotions that we feel in the workplace. So I reiterate that self-awareness is the first stage of you creating a psychologically safe and high performance environment. So we at Complete Wellbeing Global, we have the S, which is the self-awareness, which moves beautifully to the next level, which is accountability, foundations and frameworks, and engagement environment, which are the other pillars that we will talk about in the next series. Reflect and reset is my 5th tip. Always make sure that you take time to check in within yourself. Talk to someone. You as a leader, you need to be creating within your organization something that I call it clinical supervision, which was something I had in my previous work, right? Where you have conversation with not necessarily your line manager, but someone else who can support. You can debrief, you can share your challenges in a non-judgmental zone, you can explore situations that were challenging, maybe some critical instances within the week, within the day. You can debrief, you can have conversations around what could you have done better. So in hindsight, we always have we're more reflective in hindsight. We always know what to do in hindsight, right? So create an environment where you can talk about the challenges of the day, the challenges of the shift, the challenges of the project in a safe environment. So create that ladder for your team, right? You have someone you can speak to within the organization periodically, right? I suggest whatever works for organizations are different, right? So you work within what works for your organization, and I recommend that the higher the pressure of the industry, the more frequent these supervisions have to be implemented weekly. And when there's a critical incident, make sure there's a debrief time for your team, which is simply where you talk to somebody about how you felt. You're literally loading it out from yourself, and you can use all the emotions, the words, right? But you're getting it out and you're exploring how could you have done better, what could have done better. Now we have the information, so next time, so best practice, you can always improve your best practice. How would we have responded? Did we have enough staff to manage this situation? Why was it challenging? Did we have enough information? How can we get information next time? Did we have enough staffing? Maybe we didn't have enough staff. That's why we were overworked. That's why we were overwhelmed, because we didn't have enough number of staff. So maybe instead of 3, we need 5. Maybe it's 4, we need 5, whatever it is. Maybe the level of the team, the structural team members during that time, maybe you need 2 supervisors instead of 1. Maybe you need a supervisor, a manager, and another team member, depending on the type of work you're doing. So sometimes the crisis itself can be handled better next time if you just adapt or adjust staffing levels, adjust who is in the actual work. And sometimes we identify that, we were challenged because we did not have enough skill. So maybe it's time for retraining, some training regarding this particular issue that was challenging, right? We need to bring in some external people to retrain us because we've identified a gap. So it's not always about judgment, it's not about blame, and it's not about finding who to pinpoint. It's about how can we work better, how can we create a safe environment for the team. So I recommend debriefing and I recommend supervision, whatever way you want to name it, but make sure that you yourself, you've got somebody you offload to the stress of the crisis, the stress of the day, the stress of the shift, and your team have a safe space, time allocated to have somebody to support them like you've been supported. So remember, another note-taking moment, right? Remember I had one previously. This is the second note-writing moment, that what you fail to manage within yourself as a leader. So if you lack self-awareness, if you cannot manage yourself, it will eventually leak into how you lead others. So here's your challenge for this week. I want you to take 10 minutes to tune into yourself and ask yourself, what have I been ignoring, numbing, or avoiding? It's not about being judgmental to yourself, but get curious. Ask yourself these questions. And if you are leading a team in a high pressure industry, it's time to check or assess the risk and the resilience of your team. And if everything I've spoken about today has resonated with you and you're curious to explore, or you're ready to take this level of support for your own organization, then I suggest you book a workplace safety and resilience consultation. The link is in the show notes, and we'll get back to you and arrange a time that suits. Join me next time as we continue on with the Safe Deep Dive series, where we'll be focusing on the next pillar, which is A, standing for accountability and action. Now you've learned about self-awareness, we smoothly move into taking action. Until then, lead well, live well, and thrive, and not survive. See you in the next episode.